Hey guys, it's so good to have you. Welcome to the Elevate online experience and welcome to week 3 of our series 100. Go back on our YouTube channels and check out week 1 and week 2 if you missed it. If by chance you joined us for week 1 and week 2 of this brand new series, maybe subscribe to our channels for future series. Maybe like our channel and share it to your mates that may be interested. Today's awesome worship is taken by our very own awesome and talented Elevate music team. Enjoy it.
Bring it all to peace. Storm surrounding me, let it break. At your name still, call the sea to still, the rage in me to still every wave. At your name, Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, breathe, call these lungs to live, call these lungs to sing once again. I will praise, breathe, call these bones to live, call these lungs to sing once again. I will praise Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, and Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, your name is alive, and the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, then the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. And Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, and Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus. I don't wanna be afraid every time I face the waves. I don't wanna be afraid. I don't wanna be afraid. I don't wanna feel the storm just because I hear it roar. I don't wanna feel the storm. I don't wanna feel the storm. Peace, be still, say the word and I will set my feet upon the sea till I'm dancing in the deep. Peace, be still, you are here so it is well. Even when my eyes can't see, I will trust the voice that speaks. I'm not gonna be afraid, 'cause these waves are only waves. I'm not gonna be afraid. I'm not gonna be afraid. I'm not gonna fear the storm. You are greater than its roar. I'm not gonna fear the storm. I'm not gonna fear it all. Peace, be still, say the word and I will set my feet upon the sea till I'm dancing in the deep. Peace, be still, you are
Here it is, guys, week 3 and the final week of our awesome financial series, 100. It's taken by our very own Mark Pomeroy. Enjoy it.
Well, hey there, Elevate family. Welcome to the third and final week of our annual series on financial management. This year, we called it simply 100. How we can, and we've been looking at how we can take the 100% of the financial resources that God blesses us with and entrusts us with and manage them in a way according to His principles. And as best as we can determine, and we've been teaching this exact same approach for many years, is that God's approach, God's principles, simply we've boiled them down to give, save, live. In that order of priorities. First, give, take, and we put some numbers on them, or some percentages. Take the first 10% and give that to God through the local church. Take the second 10% and pay yourself. Save. Don't spend it. Save. 10, and then live. 80%. Live off the rest. And this is what we would say, and again, our best determination, the pathway to financial freedom, which God absolutely wants for you. And so if you missed any of the first 2 weeks, I strongly encourage you to go back and either watch them here on this platform, or you can listen to them on any of the top podcast platforms. Just search for us, Elevate Church Perth, and we'll be there. Because this today's message makes sense only really in light of the first 2 messages, and us getting a very comprehensive biblical understanding of God's principles and priorities and approach for financial management. So I can't stress that strongly enough. Now, as I mentioned, it's the third and final week in our series, and so I want to drill into this third topic, live. Now, last week I highlighted a common mistake, and this is it here. I appreciate that might look a little small, but the point is, and let me talk you through it, is that it's very common for people over time, as they, in their working careers, to be in the habit of spending everything they earn, to have their expenses keep pace with their income. And the result of that, and this is what I taught last week, the result of that is that they have no savings, that at the end of the week or the fortnight or the month, whatever the pay period, and then year on year, they have no savings. They have nothing to show for this income that they've been earning. Well, I want to just shift gears slightly, because there's another also very common mistake. And unfortunately, I would put this one in the next level up. This is even more problematic than spending everything you own. And this is the mistake of spending more than you earn. Your expenses greater than your income. And here we are in 2022. This has never been easier, because whole industries have been created and companies have been birthed out of those industries over the last 60 years. And then in the last decade, there's some new versions of this. And that is lenders giving consumers access to money you haven't earned yet. Let me say that again. The whole idea of a lender lending to a consumer is lending you money that you haven't earned yet. In other words, lending you somebody else's money. And there's a name for this. It's called consumer debt. And I would think, which is a point I made last week, a lot of the fuel for this and a lot of the reason people take this up and take up these loans and take on consumer debt and spend more than they earn consistently is that we've bought into this message that our quality of life is hitched to our standard of living, that the pathway to happiness is newer, more, shinier, bigger, better. And so we just keep adding on stuff. And we're so compelled to adding on stuff that our consumption overtakes our earnings. We pay for things ahead of actually earning the money to afford them. And what happens then, and this is the great paradox, and I mentioned this last week, again, I mentioned this. The great paradox is that if you take on consumer debt because you've bought into the lie that our quality of life is hitched to our standard of living, then actually you can end up being less happy, having less joy, less peace, more stress, more anxiety, more relational tension. It's not God's best. And in fact, Solomon, he said it very, very clearly. And I'm going to drop a truth bomb from Solomon. Now, Solomon was the third king of Israel, considered one of the wisest people that ever lived. And he would say and write incredibly wise things. And they've been recorded. And we have access to them in what we now call the book of Proverbs. And there's one of Solomon's Proverbs that when we teach on consumer debt every single year, we double click on this exact proverb every single year. Because it's vital. And by the way, when you read it, it's actually kind of confronting, very confronting, which is why we double click on it. This is what Solomon wrote. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. And when Solomon uses the word slave, he's not being hyperbolic, because this is exactly the arrangement that you enter into when you accumulate consumer debt. See, the thing about slaves is slaves have no choices. Slaves do what they're told, when they're told, and how they're told. They don't get to negotiate. And this is exactly the same relationship that you enter into when you take on consumer debt. The lender will tell you what to repay, when to repay it, and how to repay it, and you have no choices. You are their slave. Now get this, people. In January 2021, so just over a year ago, the average household consumer debt in Australia was $20,500. Consumer debt, average household consumer debt. And you may look at that figure, and I think there's probably three responses. Some of you have no household debt, and you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, that means someone else has got that number. Yeah, it does. That's exactly what that means. Others of you are thinking, well, all right, I mean, we've got some consumer debt, but it's not $20,500, so, we're doing better than average, which is true. And then there's a third group of you that are like, gee, only $20,500, because chances are some of you have more consumer debt than that. And whilst it's common, it's not God's best. Now, before we go on, I just want to underline something very, very important. My goal for teaching today on consumer debt and is not, if you have consumer debt, my goal is not to shame or guilt you. My intention is to give you some encouragement and some instruction to how you can actually get out of this, how you can actually progress, how you can actually move forward and ultimately move towards and into a place of financial freedom. However, let me say right up front, it's going to take planning, it's going to take hard work, it's going to take sacrifice, and here's, I think, maybe the most uncomfortable truth it's going to actually require lifestyle change. Because the habits that got you into debt won't get you out of debt. Someone said it this way: it's much easier to slide down a mountain than it is to climb back up. And the reality is that if nothing changes, nothing changes. So let me first define consumer debt. Now, firstly, just understand, consumer debt doesn't include your mortgage, your home loan. And the reason why, and the distinction is, consumer debt is debt that you've accumulated that isn't linked to an asset, whereas your home loan is linked to your house. So your mortgage is off the table when we're talking about consumer debt. These things, however, are what comprise consumer debt, very familiar to most of us. Credit card debt, personal loan debt, store card debt, student loan debt, payday loan debt, and then one of the more recent entrants, buy now, pay later debt. And what consumer debt does is it postpones your problems while giving you what you want immediately. In fact, not only does it postpone your problems, it ultimately accumulates more problems for you. This week I was just riffing in my head about like this whole buy now, pay later industry that's popped up, how that compares to putting things on a credit card in terms of penalties, interest rates and penalties for late payments and so on and so forth. So I just, asked the internet, which is better, buy now, pay later or credit card? But here's the thing. If you're asking that question, it is just, apart from just general interest, if you're asking that, it's a bad question. In fact, it's the wrong question. The better question is, do I have the money to buy this? And if the answer is no, then debt for you should probably spell, don't even buy that. Do I have the money to purchase this? Do I have the money to pay for this? If the answer is no, then debt for you, the mantra, the message is don't even buy that. And I get it. We want it now. We want instant gratification. But again, consumer debt postpones your problems whilst giving you what you want now. But it doesn't remove your problems. And in fact, it ultimately adds to your problems. And one of the things that fuels this as well is, as well as impatience, is this new thing that's spreading like a disease in Western society, is the idea of entitlement. Oh, I deserve this. I work hard. I deserve this. Oh, well, I grew up with nothing and there's no way I'm going to continue to live like that. But instead of looking to earn more, we look to spend more and spend more than we earn, which is a terrible, terrible, terrible approach. Now, one of our financial gurus who we've drawn a lot of encouragement and inspiration and instruction from over many, many years is Dave Ramsey. And I encourage you to jump on his website, daveramsey.com, and you'll see some resources there, one of which is specifically targeted for people who are in debt and offers a step-by-step pathway to get out of debt. He calls it the 7 baby steps. I talked about this briefly last week. Dave Ramsey's baby step number 1, before you do anything else, even in fact while you have consumer debt, is save up and put it at arm's reach $1,000 for your emergency fund. And here's the great reveal. This is the thing that payday loans exist for. Payday loans exist to give people within a very short period of time with some very minimal application, questions, and credit checks to give people about $1,000, a bit less, a bit more, in a short period of time. But if, and typically when it breaks, I haven't got the money, I'll get a payday loan. this emergency fund means you can give yourself a payday loan out of your money. You don't have to go into consumer debt. That's why it is step 1. Now, step 3, and again, I talked about this last week, is a larger emergency fund. So this is step 3. So you've got $1,000 put away at arm's reach. When it breaks, you can access that. Step 3 is 3 to 6 months of living expenses in savings. And this isn't when it breaks. This is when your job breaks. This is when your business breaks. This is for when your health breaks, for when you're faced with a dramatic loss or maybe even a complete loss of income, that you and your family are going to have a buffer while you reorient and reactivate what you need to do. So you can look at these 7 baby steps for yourself and click through and learn more about them. I skipped over step 2. Step 2 is what I want to talk about today. Dave Ramsey has step 2 as pay off all debts. Again, not including your mortgage or your home loan, but pay off all consumer debts. So this is how it works. Real simple. Just the mechanics are, once you've developed a little bit of margin and you've established that $1,000, take that margin now that you've got the $1,000, take that margin now and start to attack your consumer debt. Declare war on your consumer debt. Declare that this is going to end. I'm not going to take on any more debt, and I'm going to pay off all of my consumer debt. Now, initially, within the baby step number 2, it requires accurately assessing your situation. No sticking your head in the sand, no shoving bank statements and credit card statements and personal loan statements in a box or in a shredder or burning them ceremonially. No, get them all on the table. List them out. Who's the institution you owe the money to? How much do you owe them? When do they expect to have you pay it all off by? Get ruthlessly honest with that list. Now, there's 2 ways, generally speaking, there's 2 ways to then list them out in order of priority. One is, and this is the way that Dave Ramsey encourages to do it, is rank them from lowest amount owing at the top down to largest amount owing at the bottom. The other general school of thought is rank them the highest interest rate owing at the top down to the lowest interest rate owing at the bottom. The idea of that second one is that the higher interest rate one, attack that first so you can, because that's the one you're paying more interest on, you're paying more repayments on. We use and recommend Dave Ramsey's approach. He calls it the debt snowball. Rank them smallest amount to highest amount. For the simple reason that the debt snowball, Dave Ramsey's debt snowball approach, adds the psychology into the mix. It recognizes that we are incentivized by getting a win, even if it's just a small win. So by putting the lowest amount debt at the top of the list and attacking that first while making just the minimum required payments on the rest, that's going to be somewhat doable. That's going to be the one that's more in reach. And when you hit that first one and knock that off, there's some momentum that starts to get, there's some confidence that starts to get created. And you take that and you start to apply that to the next, and then the next, and then the next, and then eventually get debt free. Now, as I close out our series, and as I close out today, let me show you something that's kind of mind-blowing when you first come across it. And this is found in Deuteronomy chapter 15. This is one of the earliest books in the Old Testament, and this is something that God declared, God instructed the people of Israel to do. Check this out. At the end of every 7th year, cancel all debts. Hello! This is the procedure. Everyone who has lent money to a neighbor writes it off. You must not Press your neighbor or his brother for payment. All debts are canceled. God says so. How good is that? Every 7 years, 14, 20, every 7 years, all debts are canceled. No 25-year loans, no 30-year loans, maximum loan period, 7 years. Wow. Well, there's two big takeaways that I want to underline, and then we're done. But the first one is surrender the fantasy of sending this instruction to your credit card provider, because it doesn't apply to them. It doesn't apply to you. It doesn't apply to me. It doesn't apply to them. This was a specific thing that God instructed to the Israelites many, many, many centuries ago. But what you can do, though, is you can take the principle and put a time goal on you self-canceling your debts. In other words, paying them off. Going back to the debt snowball, cancel your own debts. Don't just let them linger and linger and linger and just pay the bare minimum and just like learn to live with them. No, declare war and cancel your own debts and put a faith goal on it. Put a time goal on it. Here's the second thing, and this is maybe the less obvious one. The reason God felt confident encouraging anyone who had some outstanding monies owed to them every 7 years is because the Israelites would only ever apply for a loan if they felt confident they had the means to pay it off within 7 years. And so therefore the cultural assumption was that after 7 years, if anybody that you've lent money to hasn't paid it back, then something unexpected must have gone wrong in their circumstances. And as an act of compassion, not anything to do with the financial metrics, please forgive them of the debt and help them into the next 7-year cycle. It was an integrity issue. We can learn something from that. DEBT, don't even buy that if you don't have the money. Don't even apply for the loan if you don't have the money. Don't even get the credit card if you don't. It's an integrity issue. If you can't repay it, don't set yourself up in the first place. And final word, and I'm done, is once you've paid off all old debts, make the decision that you will not accumulate new debts. Because if you do accumulate new debts, you're just going to find yourself on a treadmill. And it's work, and it's strenuous, but it's not progress. Here's a couple of our incredible team members who have been on this journey of give, save, live, and moved into a place of financial freedom. I'm sure it's going to inspire you.
I remember there was a point in time I was having a conversation with a good friend of both Rochelle and I about mission work, and they're very involved in the groundwork of mission work, in getting out there and going to the poorest countries and helping people on the ground. But this friend, she sort of made it very clear to us that God doesn't call everyone to do that, and the people that are out there in the field, they need people like us behind, financially secure, to be able to support them in the work that they do. That's just as important, and we really felt together that that's what who God called us to be.
The other thing I think as well is that there's no ability to be generous when you have nothing to be generous with, and I've always been a generous person. That was probably the way I was raised. My parents worked for a mission organisation, and they lived on the donations of others. I got to see firsthand how God provides when you trust Him, and how God uses people to be generous. And that was how I always wanted to be. But it got to the point where we weren't able to do that because we just didn't have the resources, and that was something that was truly heartbreaking for me.
We kind of found ourselves in debt just really by not keeping track of what we were doing. We just weren't being careful with what we were spending. We just thought we were normal. We had all the things that normal people had, a credit card, a car loan, all that sort of thing. But there was a particular series that came up at Elevate where God really spoke to us. It was a series about money. It was a series about how to handle your finances the way God has laid it out to. So it was kind of at that point where we realised, hang on, maybe there's a few things we need to change about the way we're going about this.
The first thing that we really knew we had to do was create a budget and get strict with tracking our spending. So of the two of us, we both have our gifts and strengths, and Jared's strength is definitely more on the side of finances and that kind of thing. So we decided together that he would be the one to put the budgets together, come to me to discuss whether or not I thought that they would work, and that then he would track all of our expenditure in this fantastic budgeting app called Good Budget. So it's a really easy way to track what we're spending as we're spending it.
It was still really a partnership the way we went about it. Together we still agreed on what to or not to spend the money on.
It was important for us to continue giving 10% because I believe that it's really important to honour God with our first and best, and if you're not doing that, He really doesn't have the ability to work through the remaining 90%. It's how do you trust God with your finances? Do you want to try and do it all yourself, or do you want to trust that we have a God of amazing provision?
We saw God work through our commitment to getting out of debt a number of times along the way. There were a lot of small wins along the way, and I think that was part of following this process called the debt snowball. The way that's laid out is exactly designed for that, for having these small little wins along the way, for keeping you motivated.
God actually also blessed us throughout the process, and He actually enabled us to pay off debt quicker than we expected through these blessings that He provided to us. In that time frame as well, we were also able to buy a new house in the suburb that we had always been dreaming about living in. Though it might sound like that's just getting more stuff, it actually, what it is for us is that it's allowed us to have a home and a place to invite people so that we can create relationships and friendships by sharing this beautiful place that we now live.
So now that we've finished this journey of getting rid of this debt that we had, there's just so much blessing that God's opened up, and really one of the big ones for me is just the amount of stress level that is not there anymore. There's a lot less stress. We used to have a couple of brand new cars, really nice flash cars, but they're gone now, and what we're driving is a 10-year-old little Hyundai. There's just no stress. It's a joy to drive this thing. I love this little car. And it's a manual, so it's good fun, like a rally car.
Our friends who we were discussing earlier are now working for an international organisation called Wipe Every Tear. They work freeing women who are victims of the sex trade in the Philippines, and we're able to support them month to month in their work, which is so incredible, and the stories that come out and the lives that are changed from that are just amazing. We have the flexibility to be able to say, okay, we're going to give something toward that because we really feel as though we should. We feel that it's something that God wants us to give to.
We've got a nice overseas holiday planned. It's our 10-year wedding anniversary that we're celebrating, but we're also using that as a bit of a celebration of having completed this journey, of having paid this debt off, to be able to really just keep going forward for God.
And we're just really excited to be able to see what He has in store for us in the future.
Yep.
As I said last week, guys, if giving is something that you'd really like to hone into as a part of your financial plan for the year, the ways to give can be found just below. While we're on that subject, guys, if there's another way you'd like to really dig in this year, maybe host a watch party from your very own house. Thanks again, guys, for joining us on the Elevate Online Experience. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. Have a great week.